Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are stepping into a world that is, well, it's delightfully literal.
And dangerously so.
And I mean that in the most dangerous way possible. Imagine a place where if you say someone is throwing a tantrum, you better duck.
Oh, yeah?
Because a physical projectile of rage is like literally coming at your head.
A little red ball of fury.
Exactly. Or if you see a nightmare, it's not some bad dream you just wake up from, but it's an actual physical dark horse that delivers bad dreams like a mail carrier.
It is a very unique landscape. We are, of course, talking about the magical land of Xanth.
Specifically, we're diving deep into the fifth book of Piers Anthony's famous fantasy series, a book titled Ogre, Now, for those of you who might think fantasy is all, swords and sorcery, just hold on, because this deep dive is going to be a bit different. We have a massive stack of source material here. I mean, chapters upon chapters of text. And our mission is to analyze a journey that's as much about psychology and identity as it is about fighting dragons.
And that's what's so fascinating here. Because while Xanth is, it's famous for its puns, and we'll get to the puns, believe me, they are unavoidable.
Oh, they're everywhere.
Ogre. Ogre is actually a really deep character study. It explores, the consequences of intelligence, the burden of self-awareness, and what happens when you strip away the very traits that you think define you.
Right. And we're following this incredibly unlikely duo. A half-human nymph named Tandy and an ogre named Smash.
And Smash is, well, he is not your typical ogre.
Not at all. Or he starts out that way and then things get, complicated.
Very complicated.
But before we get to the ogre, let's just set the scene a little bit. We really need to talk about the world itself. The source material paints this picture of a land where language just dictates reality.
It absolutely does. In Xanth, puns are basically the laws of physics. If you see a rolling hill, the ground is actually undulating beneath your feet.
It's trying to trip you.
Exactly. If you encounter a firewater moat, that water is literally on fire. But it goes deeper than just, geography. The biology of the world is magical. You have things like IQs, which we'll definitely get to later.
Oh, yeah.
And the nightmares. It creates this environment where you have to be so hypervigilant about what you say and what you see.
Let's start with those nightmares, because that's really where our story kicks off. We are introduced to Tandy. She's 19. She's living in these caverns below the surface of Xanth, and she has a problem.
She does. A very big problem. And it highlights a really serious theme that kind of underpins this whole whimsical world. See, Tandy is a hybrid. Her father is a human soldier, a guy named Crombie, and her mother is a nymph named Jewel.
And nymphs in Xanth they're these perfect magical beings.
Magically perfect, yeah.
Yeah.
They're described as super voluptuous, carefree, beautiful, and they live entirely in the moment. But Tandy, being half human, feels physically inadequate. She describes herself as having a cute face, but not enough of the
rest of it.
The rest of it, yeah, to count as a real nymph in her eyes.
And she also has this human burden, right? The source text, I think it calls it an awareness of consequence.
Yes, that is the key phrase. And it's so important. Nymphs generally do not worry about tomorrow. They don't stress about what might happen next week. They're just pure impulse.
But humans do.
But humans do. Tandy has inherited that human anxiety, so she's completely stuck in the middle. She feels too human to be a nymph, but she's living in this magical environment that kind of expects her to be one.
And that anxiety is just compounded because she is being stalked.
Right. There is a demon named Xanth, and this is where the story takes a much darker turn.
Yeah, reading the source material on this part, it actually feels quite menacing. Xanth isn't just some mischievous imp. He's a demon who can walk through walls, and he is pursuing Tandy for reasons that are, explicitly non-consensual.
The text is shockingly clear on this. It says that demons, given a choice between rape and seduction, prefer the rape because they are chaotic, evil entities. And that's terrifying. Tandy is living in constant fear in her own bedroom. She can't lock the door because he just phases through the wall.
So it sets up the stakes immediately. This isn't just an adventure for fun. It is a flight from trauma.
Absolutely.
And Tandy tries to defend herself with her magic talent. In Xanth, everybody has a specific magic talent. Hers is throwing a tantrum.
And like we said at the top, it is so literal. She gets angry, clutches up, and she hurls a visible physical tantrum that hits the demon like a bomb. It shatters him.
Which sounds pretty effective, but there's always a catch in Xanth.
There's a catch.
Yeah.
Demons in Xanth reform. It's just a temporary solution. Shattering him just buys her a few minutes of peace.
So she decides she has to escape. She needs to get to her father, Crombie, at Castle Runia, But she's underground, she has no way to travel, and she's terrified. So she does something incredibly brave and also incredibly desperate.
She decides to hijack a nightmare.
I really want to unpack this sequence because the mechanics of it are just wild. She captures a nightmare, a carrier of bad dreams, by leaping onto it. But she has to do it while she's asleep.
Right. It's a whole process. Nightmares exist to deliver bad dreams to sleepers. They don't just, trot around in the physical world during the day waiting for passengers.
So she has to trick the system.
He has to trick the system. She practices on a bolster pillow, learning how to jump onto a horse's back. Then she takes sleeping pills to induce sleep.
She drugs herself to escape. That's high stakes.
It is. She waits for the horse to enter her dream, and then, within the dream logic, she leaps onto its back. And because she's physically asleep but dreaming of riding, and because of the magic of the mare, her physical body dematerializes.
So she becomes a ghost, basically.
Her and the horse. They become intangible spirit matter. They just ride through solid rock, passing through goblin caves, past something called the brain coral, just zooming through the subterranean world.
It's such a cool concept for fast travel. It's like astral projection, but you bring your body with you in a ghostly form.
But there's a massive risk involved, and it's tied to the sleeping pills.
The pills dictate the duration of the spell.
Exactly. When the pills wear off, the sleep ends. When the sleep ends, the dream ends. And when the dream ends,
the nightmare vanishes back to the spirit realm. It's a ticking clock.
A very real ticking clock. And it runs out just as the sun is rising. She wakes up with a jolt, the mare fades away, and she is just dumped on the ground. She's exhausted, she's battered, and most importantly, she is at the wrong castle.
She was aiming for Castle Runia, the seat of the king. Instead, she lands in front of the castle of the good magician Humphrey. And for anyone who knows Xanth, Humphrey's castle is, well, it's a bit of a hoarder's situation, isn't it?
It's the home of the most knowledgeable man in Xanth, and as you'd expect, it is cluttered with centuries of magical artifacts. It's also guarded by a zombie-filled moat and a hydrant-like monster.
A hydrant, like a fire hydrant with multiple heads.
You got it. But Tandy survives the landing and is greeted not by the magician himself, at least not at first, but by his wife, the Gorgon.
Okay, let's pause on the Gorgon. In Greek mythology, a Gorgon turns you to stone if you look at her. She's a monster. But here,
it's a total subversion of that trope. She's described as having this very shapely, voluptuous figure, but her face is just a void filled with writhing snakes.
So she has to keep it covered.
Has to, or she'll accidentally petrify people. But personality-wise, she's incredibly kind, she's domestic, she's in a happy marriage with the magician, and she immediately just takes Tandy under her wing.
It's our first big hint that monsters in this book aren't always what they seem.
Not even close.
And this is where our other protagonist finally enters the stage. Enter Smash.
Smash. He's such a fantastic character study. He's introduced as this massive, destructive ogre. He arrives at the castle to ask the magician a question. In Xanth, that's how the economy of magic works. You perform a service for the magician, and in exchange, he answers your question.
But Smash is classic ogre material. He forgets the question by the time he gets there.
He does. He literally forgets what he wanted to ask. But let's look at Smash's background, because it explains everything that happens to him later. He's a son of Crunch, a full-blooded ogre, and a curse fiend actress who played an ogress in a play.
Wait, hold on. Let's clarify that. His mom isn't a real ogress.
Genetically, no. She was a human woman who was just acting in a role. But Crunch the ogre saw her in her makeup, fell in love with her ugliness, and she sort of just went with it.
She stayed in character for life.
For her entire life. So Smash is actually half human, just like Tandy.
But he doesn't know that, does he? Or at least he doesn't acknowledge it.
He represses it completely. He identifies purely as an ogre. He speaks in these terrible rhymes because that's what ogres do. He loves bashing things. He claims that brains are mostly muscle and that thinking gives him a headache. He has built his entire identity around the cultural expectations of being an ogre.
Me smash, me bash. It's a performance of masculinity or ogre-inity?
Essentially, yes. It's a very defensive identity. But the good magician Humphrey, he sees right through this. Humphrey is the magician of information. He knows everything. He realizes Smash is living a lie.
So he decides to meddle.
He meddles. He gives Smash an answer without a question. And he gives Tandy a service.
The old switcheroo.
Exactly. The answer for Smash is that he will find what he needs among the ancestral ogres. But to get the directions to find them, he has to perform a service.
Which is?
You must escort Tandy to safety. They are forced to travel together.
And neither of them is happy about this at all. Tandy is terrified of monsters for a very good reason, considering the demon fiant. And Smash looks at this tiny, frail human girl and thinks she's just going to be a burden. He's so annoyed. But they head out. And this is where we get into the real meat of the journey, both literal and metaphorical.
Right. They start traveling north, and initially, the dynamic is exactly what you'd expect. Smash is the brute force protector. They encounter rolling hills, hills that physically roll over the landscape like waves and tangle trees.
I love the tangle tree encounter. It feels like it's there just to establish Smash's baseline competence. It's a carnivorous tree with tentacles, right?
Yes. It grabs Tandy, intending to eat her. And Smash doesn't need a strategy. He doesn't think. He just goes to town on it. He rips the tentacles, ties them in knots, and bashes the trunk until it lets go.
So he's good at his job.
He is incredibly effective at violence. He is comfortable in his skin here. He is doing what ogres are supposed to do.
But then the dynamic shifts completely. And this is, I think, the turning point of the entire book. They enter a region of hanging vines. These vines look like braided hair cues, and they have eyeballs growing on them.
They're called IQs.
IQ.
You got it.
So Smash, being clumsy and, arguably not looking where he's going, stumbles right into one. The vine wraps around his head.
And in Xanth, contact with an IQ isn't just annoying. It transfers the property of the pun. The vine confers high intelligence to the victim.
So the vine wraps around his brain, and suddenly the ogre, who could only speak in monosyllabic rhymes, is reciting Shakespeare.
He starts using words like indubitably, probability, and causal connection. The rhyme scheme just vanishes instantly. He becomes articulate, logical, and highly analytical.
That is hilarious. But for Smash, it is not funny at all, is it?
No, and this is where the character study gets really deep. He views this intelligence as a curse. He is deeply ashamed. In his worldview, an ogre is strong and stupid. To be articulate is to be un-ogreish.
It's a deformity to him.
It's a deformity. He feels he has lost his entire identity.
That is such a great reversal of the usual tropes. Usually characters in stories want to get smarter. Smash wants his ignorance back because ignorance is part of his cultural definition of self.
Precisely. And it completely changes the power dynamic with Tandy. Tandy realizes he's smart. She starts to rely on him not just for muscle, but for strategy. But Smash is constantly battling this internal shame.
So what does he do?
He starts code switching. When they meet strangers, he deliberately uses bad grammar and grunts and pretends he's still stupid. He is hiding his intelligence like it's a shameful secret.
So they continue on, this genius ogre pretending to be a moron and a half-nymph girl with body image issues, and they start picking up strays. It becomes a classic RPG party gathering.
It really does. They arrive at the Magic Dust Village. This is a place where magical dust from the earth literally causes madness in the region. They meet trolls there, and Smash has to play the dumb brute role to avoid any suspicion. But then they meet the Siren.
The Siren. And she's the sister of the Gorgon, right?
That's right. But she's an aging mermaid/nymph who has lost her magic. She used to be able to lure men with her song, but now she's lost her voice and her allure. She's lonely.
So she joins the group. Why?
She joins because she hopes that if she travels to a place called Lake Okeechobee, she might find a merman. She's looking for love in her old age.
It's a bit tragic, honestly. She's just clinging to her past glory. And to get her to the lake, they use a catapult. But in Xanth, a catapult is not a machine.
No, of course not. It's a giant cat. A literal massive feline that, when you feed it catnip, uses its tail to fling you in a basket across the landscape.
I just love that image. A massive tabby cat just launching people. So they get flung to the lake, and then they pick up another member, John.
John the Fairy. Now, this is a fascinating little subplot about, of all things, bureaucracy. John is a tiny, delicate female fairy, but she is named John.
Why John?
A clerical error.
Yeah.
Her father sent a message with her intended name, but the message got garbled in transit. So legally, in the eyes of the universe, she is John.
That is peak Xanth logic.
And she's on a quest to find the male fairy who accidentally got her female name so they can swap. It's a quest for identity correction.
Amazing. And finally, there's Fire Oak.
Fire Oak is a hamadryad, a tree nymph. Her life force is tied to a specific fire oak tree. The problem is, human villagers want to cut down her tree to build a firehouse.
Because fire oak wood is fire resistant.
Naturally. So if the tree dies, she dies. She's desperate to reach King Trent, to get a royal pardon for her tree before it's too late.
So let's recap the squad here. We have a genius ogre with an identity crisis, a half-nymph with body image issues, an aging mermaid looking for a husband, a fairy with a male name, and a dying tree nymph. It is the motliest of crews.
It is a party of misfits.
Hmm.
And as they travel, the themes of identity just keep getting deeper. And this is most evident when they encounter the Hypnagogue. This section, for me, stands out because it shifts from the whimsical tone into something genuinely unsettling.
Okay, let's unpack this. The Hypnagogue. It sounds like some kind of hallucinogenic vegetable.
It's essentially a magical virtual reality trap. It's a large gourd with a peephole. If you look into the peephole, your consciousness is transported into this trance state, into a vision. And Tandy looks in.
And gets stuck.
She gets stuck. She goes completely catatonic. Her body is there, but her mind is just gone.
So Smash, being the protector, decides to look in to save her.
He does. And the description of the world inside the gourd is so stark. It's monochrome. Everything is black and white. It's a haunted house scenario. Smash has to navigate this surreal, nightmarish landscape, electric doorknobs, squeezing walls, moving stairs. It's pure psychological horror.
How does he get through it?
He navigates it using his new intelligence. He analyzes the patterns. He finds the logical way through the illogical traps until he finds a graveyard. And there he finds Candy.
But she's not just scared, right? Something's wrong. She's broken.
She has lost her soul.
Oh.
In this gourd world, the soul manifests as a glowing physical globe, and Tandy's soul has been taken. She's just empty.
Taken by whom?
By the forces that govern the nightmares. Remember earlier, Tandy wrote a nightmare to escape the demon.
The one she drugged with the sleeping pills.
Exactly. Well, apparently, in the spirit world, that was considered animal abuse. She forced the mare to carry her against its will. And the Night Stallion, who rules all the nightmares, has seized her soul as payment.
That is some harsh justice. So her soul is just locked in a coffin inside a gourd.
And this is where Smash proves he is so much more than just muscle. A normal ogre would just try to smash the coffin.
Right.
But you can't punch a spirit entity.
Right.
Smash realizes this is a legal dispute. So he negotiates.
He negotiates with the Lord of Nightmares.
He negotiates a lien on his own soul. He tells the entity in the coffin, "Give her soul back and I will owe you a soul. I have 90 days to find a replacement or satisfy the debt, or my soul is forfeit."
Wow. That is a massive sacrifice. He basically mortgages his own eternal spirit for this girl he's been complaining about escorting for half the book.
It shows his character development completely. He isn't just serving the magician's order anymore. He genuinely cares about her. He retrieves the glowing globe, he restores Tandy's soul, and she wakes up.
And she has no idea what he did.
He keeps the secret. He doesn't tell her that he's on a ticking clock. He now has 90 days to face the Night Stallion or be damned.
So they destroy the gourd, thinking the threat is gone, but Smash knows the debt is still very real. Now, as they continue their journey, the environment of Xanth just keeps throwing literal puns at them. We need to talk about some of these because the source material is just so rich with them, and they serve as these little mini-boss battles.
The landscape is essentially a minefield of wordplay. They encounter vegetable trees. Now, you might think, oh, a tree that grows carrots, how nice.
Seems helpful.
But there's a trap. Smash smells a rat.
A literal rat.
Literal rats, disguised as vegetables on the tree. They are mimicking the produce to lure in prey. A whole swarm of rats attacks them. And here we see Tandy's power come back in a big way. She throws a tantrum.
I really love that this is her specific magic. It's so unique. And it just neutralizes the rats instantly.
It does, and it validates her. She realizes her human emotions, specifically her anger, have real power. She doesn't have to be a passive victim anymore.
And there are other creatures, too. They find the Prince of Wales.
The Prince of Wales.
Spelled Prints.
Exactly. It's a monster made of foam and cloud that runs on water, leaving footprints, and it just wails constantly. It's a Prince of Wales, punning on the mammal.
That hurts my brain in the best way.
They also encounter magma cum laude, which is a very loud volcanic rock formation, and a catastrophe, which is a trophy of a cat's rear end that, when touched, causes a cave-in.
If you aren't paying attention in Xanth, the English language will literally kill you.
That is the #1 danger. It's a world where semantics are survival skills. But the ultimate test of their journey, I think, comes when they reach the Gap Chasm.
The Gap. This is a massive canyon that just cuts across the entire continent of Xanth, and the source text mentions it has a forget spell on it.
Right. People forget it even exists until they were right on top of it. This makes it incredibly dangerous because you can't plan for it. They just stumble upon it and they're stuck. They need to cross to get Fire Oak to her tree in time.
And luckily, they run into some old friends of Smash, some centaurs.
Chet and Kem, a male and female centaur. They provide a rope. But the problem isn't just the climb. It's the resident monster, the Gap Dragon.
This is the big boss fight. The Gap Dragon is described as being immense, with metallic scales, it breathes steam, and it has these invisible powers related to the gap, basically inducing memory loss or confusion in its victims.
And the battle between Smash and the Gap Dragon is a real highlight of the source text, because it perfectly blends Smash's brute strength with his new intelligence. He can't just outpunch this thing, it's way too big.
There's a moment where he actually uses the dragon's own body against it, right?
Yes. He realizes he's trapped in the dragon's coils. Brute force isn't working. So he uses the IQ intellect. He analyzes the dragon's movement, its patterns. He tricks the dragon into biting its own tail, or rather, a coil of its body near its tail. He maneuvers the dragon so that when it clamps down, it's hurting itself.
The classic stop hitting yourself maneuver, but on a kaiju scale.
And then he ties the dragon in a knot, a literal hang knot using the dragon's own tail, anchoring it to a boulder.
He ties a dragon in a knot. That is something else.
It requires immense strength, yes, but also the knowledge of knot tying that he learned from fighting the tangle trees earlier. It's the synthesis of his two selves, the strong ogre and the smart human, working together.
But the fight has consequences. While they're struggling to get out of the chasm, the party gets stuck on a ledge with a pining tree.
And this is a psychological hazard, and it's surprisingly dark. A pining tree emits this aura of intense depression and longing. To pine for something is to suffer a mental and physical decline, usually because of a broken heart.
And it affects everyone.
Everyone. They start feeling suicidal. The siren tries to jump off the ledge. Tandy tries to jump. Smash has to physically catch them and hold them back.
It's weirdly dark for a world full of puns. You have suicide, soul theft, attempted rape. Underneath the candy coating, Xanth is a rough place.
It creates a fascinating contrast. But the real tragedy happens during the escape. Smash is exhausted. He's hauling the unconscious dragon up by its tail to use as a ladder.
Which is brilliant improvisation.
It's genius, but the dragon revives. It threatens Kem, the female centaur.
And John, the tiny fairy, steps up.
John acts with just immense heroism. John is the smallest, the weakest member of the party physically. But she flies down and uses a knife to saw through the dragon's tail, where it was already damaged. She cuts the dragon loose to save the centaur.
But as the dragon falls...
it blasts her with a huge cloud of steam.
And fairies are delicate.
The steam just melts her wings off, permanently.
Oh, wow.
She saves the day, but she is maimed for life. She loses the single defining characteristic of a fairy, her flight. It's a brutal, brutal cost.
This connects right back to that theme of identity, doesn't it? Smash is an ogre who lost his stupidity. Tandy is a nymph who is losing her nymph-like innocence. Now, John is a fairy who lost her wings. Everyone is being stripped of what they think defines them.
Exactly. And the question the book is asking is, are they still themselves? Is John still a fairy without wings? Is Smash still an ogre with a high IQ? And the answer the book seems to give is yes. In fact, they are more themselves now. John proves her bravery without her wings. Smash proves his nobility with his brain.
Speaking of Smash, they finally get out of the chasm, but they run right into another problem. A tribe of goblins.
Led by a goblin named Gorbage. Goblins in Xanth are generally hostile. They immediately capture the party and threaten to cook them.
But here we see Tandy's growth. At the beginning of the book, she was hiding under the covers from a single demon. Now she stands up to an entire goblin war party.
And she uses her connections. She noon drops her mom, Jewel the nymph.
She negotiates. She points out that her mother is the one who plants the gems that the goblins love to mine and steal. If the goblins eat Tandy, the gem supply dries up. It's so shrewd, it's calculated. It's very human of her.
And Gorbage buys it. In fact, he cuts a deal. He practices exogamy, which is a fancy anthropological term for marrying outside your own tribe. He has a daughter, Goldie Goblin, who needs a husband, but she has to marry a goblin from a different tribe to keep the bloodline strong. He agrees to let Smash and the party go if they escort Goldie north to find a husband.
So the party grows again. Now they have a goblin princess in tow. But there's that secret still lingering in the background. Smash is dead.
Yes. The group thinks they're safe. They think they're on a new, simple mission, heading north to help Fire Oak and Goldie. But Smash is secretly looking for another gourd.
He wants to go back in.
He intends to re-enter that nightmare world to find the Night Stallion and fight for his soul before those 90 days are up.
And he's carrying that whole burden completely alone.
It's the ultimate service. He's protecting them not just from the physical threats they can see, but from the knowledge of his own impending doom.
So let's look at the big picture here as we wrap up. What does Ogre really tell us? We have this incredible duality of this Smash, this brute strength versus this enforced intellect.
I think the core message is really about the fluidity of nature. Smash believes his nature is to be stupid and violent. The IQ forces him to be smart and articulate. He hates it, but he uses it to save his friends over and over.
So the book is suggesting that nature isn't a straitjacket.
Exactly. You can be an ogre and be a genius. You can be a half-human and still have the essence of a nymph. Your identity is what you do, not what you're born as.
And the literal dangers of language, it seems like a commentary on how words shape our reality.
In Xanth, if you misuse a word, it can create a monster. It's a playful reminder that communication requires precision. But also, it's about looking past the label. The ogre in the title obviously refers to Smash, but by the end of this journey, he is the most noble, the most intelligent, and arguably the most human character in the entire group.
It's a redemption story for a monster who didn't even know he needed redeeming.
And for Tandy, it's a complete coming-of-age story. She stops letting her fear of monsters define her life and starts controlling the monsters, both the literal ones and the metaphorical ones inside.
It's a surprisingly deep ride for a book that's full of punny dragons and catapults.
That really is the genius of Piers Anthony's Xanth. It disarms you with humor and this kind of silliness, and then it hits you with some real philosophy.
So here's a thought to leave all of you with. We talked about the IQ vine. Smash sees it as a purse. But is intelligence really a curse for a creature that was designed for violence? If you give a tank a conscience and a philosophy degree, is it still a tank? Or does it become something else entirely? Does losing your nature, like John losing her wings or Smash losing his stupidity, does it destroy the self? Or does it just create the space for something new, something better to grow?
And you have to remember that clock is still ticking. Smash has a lien on his soul. The journey isn't over.
Thanks for diving deep with us into the wilds of Xanth. Watch out for the tangle trees, and we'll catch you on the next one.
And keep your eyes on the cue.